Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. I am going to be speaking as a continuation to a conversation that I began a few days ago, during which I pivoted into a way of assessing a man's value from the sexual marketplace value of a man to the non-sexual marketplace value of a man. Today's session will be, I guess, a conclusive part of that non-sexual marketplace value assessment and reference. I started 2 days ago by talking about the manhood value. And then in the session that I did prior, yesterday, I covered what I called character value. Now, I have to apologize. I have come up with those value names by chance, off the cuff and off the top of my head, whilst delivering the sessions. In looking back, I realized that I call it manhood value, which I think works, and character value, which I think works. So MV for manhood value and CV for character value. Now, those two fundamentally deals with a man's purpose, and the second dealt with a man's core character, which undergirds his purpose. Now, today's session will be what I call the third pillar of a man's non-sexual marketplace value, which I have combined to call the husband value, HV. So when assessing a man's non-sexual marketplace value, you're looking at MV, CV, and HV. Today we talk about HV, husband value. I'm going to speak to the ladies in this particular session, although I will be addressing men. The purpose is so a woman understands and can evaluate a man that she meets, that is interested in her, to know whether he is the right person, he is the right caliber for her to give her love, her intimacy and her womb, her body. I hope, men, you recognize that I'm in many ways criticizing you indirectly by what I share. For many sessions prior, I spoke to the ladies. The idea is not to criticize, it's to provide constructive feedback, constructive words of encouragement, but also principles that can help either sex achieve their goals and their dreams. Now, let's get started, because I think this would be a quite an interesting session. One of the things that we as a society have sadly done to ourselves is we've tried to equalize the significance of both sexes. We have said the men and women are the same. We've said that therefore, if men and women are the same, a woman can do what a man can do. For some reason, we never say the opposite. We never say a man can do what a woman can do. The consequence of that is that most children are being born. I use the United Kingdom as a reference point to being born without fathers. Fathers in the family or fathers in the community. Now, the consequence of that has been significant. One of the consequences that we see across all social issues, even economic issues, psychological issues, we find that the men are doing very poorly and women are doing very poorly. The absence of fathers in families is having a big effect on women finding good husbands. So I start today's session by simply saying, as a woman, in trying to assess a man and his husband value, whether he has the potential, and the potential has to be measurable, your first starting point is to see whether he has come from a two-parent family. Has he come from a two-parent family? Now, if you haven't, as a man, come from a two-parent family, there is a higher possibility that, unfortunately, you've missed out on some of the very useful observational learning experiences that are necessary in order to be a fully functional person, in order to learn how to be able to coexist with a woman, in order to know how to share your emotions, receive criticism, get into perhaps uncomfortable conversations, respectfully debate or disagree, make up and thrive. Children learn by what we see, especially boys. We don't learn by what we are told. So the first question is, and the first way of assessing his husband value is whether he has come from a two-parent family. There is a misnomer, however, and a mistake made in believing or in hoping that if you've come from a two-parent family, then automatically it means you have seen the right model of what a relationship should look like. I have found in my assessment, especially in the West and in the UK, the attack on masculinity has been so strong that since the baby boom generation, in addition to most children being born to single parent families with the mother being the only parent, where you have two parent families, the men in those families have been feminized because they were raised by mothers who didn't have fathers and who therefore did not develop a relationship with their fathers. So these men have been feminized. They think more from the perspective of women. They're more nurturers. They don't have a masculine frame. From the 1960s, we started to raise generations of harder women and softer men. You tend to find these men are softer, the women are harder. So there's this imbalance. The key question is not whether it's just a two-parent family. The two parents is the starting point. The second is actually whether both parents are wearing their appropriate frames, the feminine frame and the masculine frame. A man has to wear a masculine frame, but that does not deny him the opportunity to be kind, nurturing, loving. A woman has to wear the feminine frame, but it doesn't preclude her from actually being assertive, being focused, or being disciplined. The most important part is the two-parent family, and secondly, each party playing the roles that they should play, the masculine and the feminine frame, so that the child gets the opportunity to observe and draw from both parents the beauty, the uniqueness, the intelligence, the strength of both parents. Keep that in mind. That's the first. Now, a second part of what to consider is as follows. Some men are born into families where there isn't a father. For whatever reason, death in the family, or perhaps for whatever unfortunate reason, the father was never there. However, there may have been other good men in the community, in the greater extended family, that provided role model qualities that he was able to emulate and learn from. For boys particularly, one of the things that is crucial is a father provides qualities and values that are not easily quantifiable objectively. One of the reasons why a woman has to make sure that a father was involved or that good men were involved is because what we provide as men, sometimes we do not know how to express, but they're inconsequential in their impact. Delayed gratification, boundary setting, but more importantly, boundary enforcement. Rough and tumble play. As a matter of fact, here is a key part of why I'm sharing, or what I am sharing. A man who was raised by a father and who had a masculine role model, for whom the father played with him, provided rough and tumble play or roughhousing, taught him and allowed from an early age on how to take risks and how to play with his siblings, set boundaries and enforced the boundaries, and enabled the opportunity for delayed gratification. those men turn out to be more empathetic than men who were raised by mothers who gave them too much love and always spoke to them from a place of empathy. Having a family or a mother or parent where empathy is the watchword, the person or the child turns out to be more narcissistic, because empathy does not create empathy. As a matter of fact, the best way to teach a boy or a girl how to have empathy is through rough and tumble play, roughhousing, taking small risks. You have two siblings and one person is playing with the other. The boy is too hard on his sister, but if he hurts his sister and the father says, we're not going to play this game anymore, you've just hurt your sister because you cannot control your strength and your power, you're overbearing on your sister, therefore we stop the game. Assuming the boy really wanted to play on, what you find is that he's heartbroken. In that moment, he's being drawn to recognize that his sister has feelings and emotions. And therefore, if he wants the game to continue to be played long term, he has to play the game in such a way that his sister will want to play again. If he uses too much power, if he's overbearing initially, he might win the game, but she never plays. So by enforcing boundaries, by allowing rough and tumble play, he starts to calibrate his strength, his dominance, his, you might say, testosterone, his aggressiveness, in such a manner that he puts the other person's needs alongside his. His might be to win and to play continuously. Hers might be to enjoy the experience. So he has to merge his goals and desires with hers. And what you then create is empathy. Putting the other person in your shoes, thinking about the other person's needs. This is partly why those who do martial arts and why I recommend martial arts. When I started doing martial arts many, many years ago, I found I was a boy on the streets. I went into the study of martial arts primarily because I found myself always around, you might say, trouble. And the wrong motivation was, if I could learn how to fight really well, then I could be very classy as I take down these people on the streets. That was my motivation. It was, I'm always around where there's trouble, but let me go learn how to fight really well, so that when I get back on the streets, I can knock people out. When I started martial arts, I started to learn some of the basic tenets. 1, seek perfection of character. 1, be faithful. 1, endeavor. 1, respect others. 1, refrain from violent behavior. 5 tenets, all of them starting with 1, meaning they all had integrity. They were all one and the same. Suddenly, you're taught how to punch, how to kick, how to grapple. But here is the key, most important part. You're taught speed and control. You spar with people, you have to control so that you don't injure the other party, so that you have a sparring partner for the next day. But so that you don't frighten them so hard that they never come back again, because then you lose and they lose. Martial arts taught me empathy. Martial arts is another form of rough and tumble play. Grappling or jiu-jitsu is another form of rough and tumble play. You grapple, you get to a point and you tap out. An indication you've taken it too far. So you allow the tap out is one of the most powerful opportunities for empathy to be expressed, because it simply means we're grappling, we're in a fight, but I am allowed the opportunity to stop the fight at any time, and you will grant me that honor of stopping the fight. So it's very important that in addition to coming from a 2-parent family, in addition to having a man in the family or community, it's important to understand that rough and tumble play, a father that plays with his kids, allows his kids to take risks, small controlled risks, that creates strong, loving, kind men, not weak men. Now this brings me to number 2, which is, I think women should assess and judge the fathers of the men who they are interested in deciding whether those men have enough value in order to you might say, earn the opportunity to pair bond with them. You judge the fathers as harshly as you judge the boys, because most boys live out to be their fathers, just like most girls live out to be their mothers. We want to please our fathers. And if the father is not in the family, then he looks up to another role model. Sometimes it could be a gang member, sometimes it could be a coach, sometimes it could be an idol, someone or some status, influence. You have to judge his father to see whether his father has a masculine frame, to see what his father's manhood value was. Because a boy's manhood value and fatherhood value seldom falls far from his own father's value. Let me say that in a different way. Let's assume you find a young man and you've assessed his husband value to be, or character value to be, a 7. It's very likely that his father would have a similar character value or manhood value. Are there deviations? Of course. But the natural progression of things is that we tend to be like. Our genes are designed to follow those of our fathers and mothers. So it is important that you assess, meet. You should actively seek. Here's something that I find strange. Women, when they start to date, casually date, I can understand not wanting to meet the family, his family. The moment you've decided that this is going to transition from something casual to something potentially medium to long term, your first task is to meet his parents, meet his mother, and meet his father. Fundamentally, his father. Because that is the man that your husband, your significant other, is most likely going to become. And what you want to do is time travel and see who he could become and decide whether that is the type of person you would want to be married to or to be in a long-term relationship with. Now, number 3 is whether he was raised to be a husband. I'll use a different word. Was he raised to be a husband? Number 1. Was he raised to be a servant leader? Number 2. In the sessions that I have done about women, I have asked a simple question. Were you raised to be a wife? Were you taught to be a wife? Were you groomed, conditioned, and prepared to be a wife? The same questions apply to men. Was he raised to be a husband? Was he prepared to be a husband? Was he groomed? I don't like the word groomed, but in this sense, I'm talking about grooming from a good perspective. Effectively prepared for his husband role. Was he raised to be a servant leader? Leadership requires the ability to influence, but you have to be a servant leader. That's the true test of a good man, a man with a high husband value. To be the greatest, you have to be willing to be the servant. And a man who has the qualities of serving is the man you want in your life. There is so much nonsense out there in relation to relationships where men are expected that a woman has to be the one who is the servant. That is necessary to have a servant spirit, because she will be serving the children, not just the man. The whole idea of, well, he wants me to cook and clean is so trivial. I think people are unable to separate the wood from the trees. Cooking for your man or your boyfriend is trivial. The reason being, a man is generally easy to please. In the first 5 years of a child's life, most children are difficult to please. And therefore, a man is simply, and if you have a boyfriend you're cooking and serving, it's a preparation ground for the real work. It's the training ground for the task, which will be motherhood. A man also has to have that servant's spirit. He is the servant leader, and therefore he has the ability to serve you as a woman and serve the children. After all, he's serving his life, he's serving his, you might say, seed, he's serving the community by virtue of pair bonding with you. He's inviting you into his life to say, I want to serve you. As the leader of the family, he should be the servant leader, the one who actually serves. Men, and this is an assessment that women can use, look for men who are willing to do enough to help others achieve what they want. Because if those men have those qualities, he can also have whatever he chooses or wants. He pours into other people and does it effortlessly, not from a perspective of being an agent, looking for reciprocity, but because it comes natural to him. Now, number 4 is good communication. Good communication. This is key. If you want to lead, you have to be able to communicate clearly. And if you want to follow someone, you want to ensure that their ability to communicate to you clearly is not mistaken. Wars are won and lost when a general is awful in his leadership abilities. The ability to communicate very clearly. This is what I would like you to do. This is when I would like you to do it. This is how I would like you to do it. This is why I would like you to do it. This is where I would like you to do it. And this is what I would like you to do. Very clear communication. And the ability to communicate is not something we as men have instinctively. We have to be trained. Because we process information in our heads. We're usually silent. Women, from a young age, you're taught how to express your emotions. From a young age, we are taught how to be men. We're disposable. As a matter of fact, the greatest scam ever pulled on men was to convince us that we should give our lives and die, and in the process create wealth that other people will spend beyond our life and even at the point of our death. So we die early while other people spend all of the things we've created. The greatest scam ever pulled on men. In any case, a man still has to be a good communicator. A communicator is one who actually understands how to choose the right setting, how to choose the right words, how to choose the right delivery pattern and methodology. But this does not mean he doesn't have to be assertive. I have said before, and this is perhaps, I'm not using this as a compliment, I have said before that most people, when they meet me, I've never been associated with the word subtle. And generally in conversations, I would say, I hope I'm not being too subtle. The reason is I was raised and I was taught to speak, to be understood, not to be heard. Do not speak to be heard. Most men sometimes speak to be heard, but others don't understand what they are saying. Now, I do a very bad job, even today, in communicating, despite many, many years, decades of teaching. And that is how hard it is for a man to communicate clearly. For some people, it comes naturally. Some people are great teachers. A man plays different roles as a communicator. At the right time in a leadership position, you should be an instructor. An instruction is not an invitation for dialogue. At the right time, you should be a good encourager. At the right time, you should be a more direct and assertive speaker. At the right time, you should be a more welcoming and encouraging conversationalist. A man plays different roles and different functions. We think in our heads as men. I'll give you a good example. Some time ago, I was at a friend's place, a great woman, and we were speaking. She had invited a couple, a family friend, who was roughly the same age as myself. And my beloved and I, we found this couple to be very, very great and welcoming. The lady who had invited us, a family friend, a special woman, absolutely special. So special, and her characters and her characteristics were very, very unique. She wasn't a baby boomer. She came from what you will call the silent generation. So much older than myself and all of us. But I found that during the conversation, as we started to speak and as I started to speak to the man, he started to express things that seemed very foreign to his wife. She was surprised. Now, even before I started communicating with him, in the very initial interactions, I knew what his answers would be, because men, we understand ourselves. We communicate in a funny way, strange way. Sometimes it's almost shorthand. Women expect men to communicate to them like we are women, without understanding man's speak, or what I call man talk. And as he spoke, because initially she was speaking on his behalf, and I was asking him questions, and as he started to express himself, it got to a stage where you could see he switched from a passive, quiet to more expressive. And she was looking at him, and a few times she said, "I never knew that. Oh, I never knew that. Oh, I never knew that." And he was talking about some of his past experiences, and also his present perception about things, socially, economically. But the point was that she was hearing for the first time his inner thoughts that had never been expressed. Now, one of the key things you have to do as a woman is you have to learn how to be a great conversationalist. The best way is to ask questions. Ask questions relentlessly. Ask questions without fail, and ask questions without qualifying yourself. Start with the stupid questions, grow into the better questions, and then become a great questioner. You get into a man's head and thoughts, and a man communicates based on the quality of the questions you ask. Do not wait for the man to communicate clearly. Ask very, very unique, direct questions. And when he is answered, repeat back to him what he has said, so he hears his words back and he has the opportunity to correct himself. Sometimes we're like bumbling buffoons in our head. We have all these ideas, and sometimes the way we process as men ideas in our heads appears much better than when we speak. So in many ways, you're looking for a man who's a good communicator, but you should facilitate the opportunity for him to be a great communicator. Let me move to number 5. In the session I did yesterday, I spoke about, 2 days ago, I spoke about manhood value. I said we're all born male. We're born as men. We're born male, to be more frank. We're made into men. So you go from a male to a man, and that comes through work, study, work, and development. But you're crafted into becoming a gentleman. So you have 3 stages as a man. Male. So most boys are males, but not men, because they haven't actually gone through their rite of passage. They haven't developed into becoming a man. That comes through work. But to become a gentleman, he has to craft himself. Now, you cannot jump from a male or a boy to a gentleman. You just cannot. You have to go through the stages, through the fire, and then the best and the purest form of you comes out. A man that is a gentleman has developed qualities. And women, what you're looking for, a gentleman. A man who can be kind and gracious, articulate, have the right level of chivalry, etiquette, appearance, grounding, social decorum, way of presenting himself, sophistication and class, good taste, well-mannered, well-behaved. That comes by craft. And what you're looking for in a 2-parent family is the opportunity for the mother to say, "Baby, you can't sit on the table like that." And for the father to say, "Sit up straight, son. Hold your knife and fork properly. When you finish eating, you exit the table as follows," so that you see that some men have been raised to be gentlemen. I don't fall within that category. I wasn't raised with the sophistication of etiquette and decorum and table manners. It's something I have been learning and I have been accumulating along the years. But what you find is when you meet a man who is civilized, well raised, come from a good father and a good mother, It's a beauty to see. I'll give you a good example. Many months ago, or many years ago, I was in a part of South London, and I was in a place called Clapham, and I saw this couple exit the bus. And initially, when they exited the bus, there were some other people that exited with them. There must have been about 7. I have never seen a family so well dressed in my entire life. From the youngest to the father and mother. I'm talking about from about maybe 6 or 7, all the way up to about 21. Each dressed uniquely with their own identity, with their own character, but it was beautiful. You know, even the grooming, as soon as they walked out of the bus, and the beloved and I, we just admired. We just stood back, and I thought, wow, you know, this is how it looks like when you've been raised to be a gentleman and a gentlewoman. The ladies or the daughters were very classy. The men were gentlemen. Even at 7, 9, 14, 20 plus, gentlemen. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Now, initially I thought, surely they can't be the children, but they were. That was one family. And I said, wow, you know, for me, that is the asset right there. You've been raised from good soil, and you've been gifted with, you know, a great sense of inheritance. Everything I've shared so far about a man's husband value, you can summarize it into what I call the A, B, C, D, and it goes up to Z of image. Your appearance and your attitude. B, your behavior. I spoke about beauty in the first session, sexual marketplace value. C, your communication and your candor. D, your discipline. How disciplined are you as a man? How disciplined is he as a man? If you are on social media, your digital image and your digital avatar. E, empathy. F, friendliness, fitness, level of forgiveness. G, gratitude. And the list goes on. H, humility. And the list goes on. And what we're looking at here is people who have been raised and trained to be gentlemen. A husband has to have the qualities of a gentleman. Husband is a title, it's a function. Now let me expand on that husband reference, because the word husband comes from 2 words. House bond, someone who holds the house together, bonds the house together. Many people feel that it's the woman's job to keep the family together. Very wrong, absolutely wrong. It's the man's responsibility. And so as a woman, you're looking for a man who has the qualities to keep the house together. When a family fails not because of the woman. A family fails not because of the child. A family fails because of the leader. The leader in every family is the man. The family fails because of the man. The man is responsible. So, in order to minimize failure, what you're looking for is a man who has the qualities to bind the house together, to hold the house together, because fundamentally, as a servant leader, he is responsible. A man is not the head of the family. A man is the foundation. Now, for close to 15 years, I designed buildings, building construction and design, or design and construction, rather. And any experienced engineer will tell you that you begin with a substructure. It's a part of the building that is seldom seen. Usually, depending on the type of building, it will account for sometimes up to 20 or 25% of the overall structural cost of the building. But you have all these piles, depending if it's a high-rise building, being buried in the ground. And if it's a normal, shallow or low-rise building, you have shallow foundations. But the foundations are never seen. However, all of the walls, all of the structure is built, or what we call the superstructure, is built on that substructure. So, you calculate all of the potential use of the various parts of the building. Sometimes it might be what we call a multifunctional building, mixed-use building. You might have a gym, you might have a studio for dancing, You might have offices, you might have a shopping mall, residential. You aggregate how that building, based on the superstructure, could be used. And you take all that load and you calculate the load that the basement would have to carry. The man is the foundation. He undergirds and supports the entire building and structure of the family. So what you're looking for as a woman is to choose a man with a husband value that is high enough to support all of the eventualities that life will bring. For example, many a times I remember designing hotels, and we would design a hotel and you have rooms. You design a room to have an occupancy of 2, usually depending on the quality and you might say the value of the hotel. For example, if it's a 6 or 7 star hotel, you might be designing on the basis of roughly 10 square meters per person. So in a room that is 20 square meters, 2 people. It's a relatively big space. But what you might find is sometime in the future, the occupant or the owner of the hotel, the operator of the hotel might decide, well, it would be lovely to convert that particular space into, let's say, a dance hall or dance studio or a gym. Suddenly the occupancy density changes from, say, 10 square meters per person to roughly 2.5 square meters per person. So you've actually increased the number of people that will be in the space, sometimes by 5 times, 500%. The structure can only take that if you designed the slabs in such a way that you can absorb the change of use of that space. Sometimes you would have office buildings that are now converted to hotels, hotel buildings that are converted to residential or shopping malls. And what you're looking for is to have always designed a foundation, because if the foundation was not designed to accommodate all of those potential eventualities, then it will limit the change of use of the building in the future. A woman should recognize that she will go through stages. You want a man who, when you're dating as individuals, he can support you and he can undergird the relationship. When you become a husband and he becomes a husband and you're a wife, he can support the unit. When he becomes a father, 1, 2, 3, he can support. When he becomes a grandfather, he can support. When he becomes a member of the community, he can also support. A man is the foundation. As a woman, your responsibility is to assess the quality of the foundation and choose the right man, making sure that he's able. Because, for example, if your life is going to be full and you're designing a life that is similar to a skyscraper, a tall building, 50 stories or 60 stories or 70 stories, you need stronger foundations. We call them piles. You go from a shallow foundation to actually having concrete or steel piled foundations. You go further down into the soil to be able to absorb all of that extra weight and height. Your life is supposed to be designed as though you will be great. The man you choose, or who chooses you, has to be able to provide the support required to ensure that you thrive. Husband value. Now, I'm going to bring it to a close, but I'd like to address 2 or 3 other things. I have talked about the functions that men provide, the responsibilities that we provide. Provider, protector, priest, and presence. Provision and protection we put to one side. The priestly duties falls under the husband value, because a man is the one who brings the vision of the family. 2 cannot walk together except they agree on the vision. The man is the leader. The man serves that vision. The woman supports her man in serving that vision. So therefore, as a priest, or in his priestly duties, communication comes back into the picture because he has to have a vision. So and we talked about this in the manhood value when I spoke about purpose. You want a man with a sense of purpose, or who's discovered his purpose. But the priestly duties simply comes from the perspective that the man is the first teacher of the culture, of the family. Again, there is a lot of mistake being made out there where people talk about a woman being the one who actually has to be responsible for teaching. No, she transmits the culture that has been given to her. The man speaks, the woman incubates, and then she reproduces, and then she transmits, and then she passes that vision forward, a mission, and then she scribes. But like a king, the man speaks. Like a scriber, the woman reminds the man of his words. So he becomes limited by his words. Integrity. You're sovereign, husband, until you speak. The moment you speak the vision, I have to scribe and jot, write it down. And then I have to remind you of what you said, so that you're limited by your word. And I have to teach your offsprings what father said, so that there is a consistency between who you are in the fourth generation and who you were in the first generation. Different men, same vision, same dream. Interestingly, this is a key thing. A man's vision and a man's dream has to be communicated to the woman. Then she gets to choose whether she wants to buy into that vision. We propose, but we don't propose just based on love. We're proposing our vision to you. A key question a woman should ask is, do I like his vision? It's not a matter of who's proposed to you. Women are making huge mistakes in thinking you evaluate a man based on the money he has and what he's achieved or the job he has. No, you say yes to the vision because you have to buy into the vision. And that means he has to be able to communicate the vision to you clearly in a way that is succinct and in a way that you understand, and therefore in a way you can accept, so that the vision becomes your vision because you submit to him and he submits to the vision. Therefore, he provides the discipline required to achieve the vision, and you supporting that discipline process to achieve the vision. Now, this simply means that a man has to be disciplined. In judging a man's manhood value, discipline comes into the picture, because discipline is something that is necessary to achieve the vision. Now, as a matter of fact, if you have a vision, then you're forced to be disciplined. Therefore, as a woman, in choosing a man, you don't have to worry about a man and what he says. Look at his vision, and his vision should tell you what his habits should be. If he has a strong vision and his habits align with that vision, then you will see that the reason for that alignment is the word discipline. It's really that simple. Let me conclude by saying, as a man, manhood value, and in this particular instance, husband value, is the passion for knowledge, the passion for learning, the desire to learn, an inquisitive mind, an openness, someone not held back by ideology. A lot of times we see in this day and age arrogance and ignorance from a place of ideological leanings. So he doesn't learn, he doesn't grow. You see, if you do not and will not attempt to take a risk, you cannot grow. If you refuse to grow and cannot grow, you will limit yourself from becoming your best self. And if you cannot attain that potential you have, then it means you failed. In other words, hell on earth would be to meet the person that you could have been. Taking a risk means you learn something new. You set aside your ideas and you pick up a book and you study. Ladies, a man's husband value is intrinsically connected to his willingness and his humility about learning. You can't be aggressive, you can't be arrogant, and you cannot be ignorant. So judge a man based on all of these qualities that I have shared so far, and done correctly, what you find is that all men are not the same. Some of us have a higher value and some of us have a lower value from a husband value perspective. You want to choose a man that has a high husband value based on everything I have shared so far. And I really hope that you choose wisely.